There is a version of the 4-H pageant where Julie is heavily involved in teaching safety with weaponry. She is good with weapons in most universes and, in truthful facts, is a famed Olympian which brings Surf City much acclaim in that particular universe. Particularly to that universe, she seems to float on air more than to walk. She exudes a warmth. She is summertime. But of course, the 4-H pageant has ended, and the decor has been put away in favor of other holidays and celebrations. The mortal earth in this universe cools, and Julie walks atop the smooth and silent rotation of things, firmly placed on the ground, anchored to it really. She is winter here. She only feels a modicum of freedom as arrows fly on their appointed rounds, and only occasionally is she startled by a punctuated tremor of the earth, quaking far from Surf City. It is here, in this winter universe, that we watch over her, Julie, a creature of the night, the archer. Rage kept her from the 4-H pageant, which would have been a perfect time to do recon, perfectly innocent, the whole town out in one place. Julie would have gotten to watch their patterns, their associations, to spy on the living and the undead who don't care to kowtow or keep to the shadows. But that rage, oh, that rage. He went from silence to mad grinning and howling all in the space of 3 days, a full 72 hours and 1 minute. Julie knows this explicitly because she counted backwards and assumes all of her data to be correct. It is hard to tell what kind of howling rage is participating in. It seems both of a jovial and criminally insane nature. It is a warning and also a beacon. It is a sound so disruptive and so private that she can no longer load arrows into the notch of her bow in peace, even for practice. It is a sound that is certainly not human, but within research parameters seems to be somewhere between a bonobo and a wolf. And the howling is starting to get to her. Not that her apartment was so pristine in earlier times, of course, but now Julie just has book upon book upon book scattered on the floor. In the back of her mind, she wonders, was it the energy of stealing these books from the not always there floor of the library that is part of the issue? But that is a problem for another time. She did scream at Rage once after asking him what he wanted 10 times. If only she'd asked him 11 and screamed on the 12th, perhaps the answer would have been different. And what Julie does not know is what Varric is about to find. Have you talked to your charges about their breathing recently? Remember that amongst organic organ capacity of most mortal charges, they have these things called lungs. Most mortals have a set of 2 lungs. For the some part of mortals, they are healthy enough. In a way, they mimic the air intake of deciduous leaf shedding trees, but in reverse. Or perhaps not. I'm still not sure. They breathe in the carbon dioxide, those old rascally universe beginning atoms, and breathe out oxygen. Or perhaps it truly is the other way around, and they are more like trees than they themselves even know. In any case, this breathing is essential for a successful life. Ask them about their airflow. Ask them about their inhalers, their respirators, their oxygen tanks. These do tend to happen at stages of life, so stick clearly to your charge folder. You may also inquire, but gently, about allergies, which is a reminder for a future message from the cosmos. Ben and Julie are on opposite sides of town when they first see the flyers. They have no concept of how many, only that they seem to be more snow than paper. When you reach to touch the flyers, they dissolve in the hand, not just the ink, but also the paper itself. There are so many to be seen, so many left behind, a strange blanket that crumbles and cascades onto the street, the sidewalk, the flotsam and jetsam of life. But if one is lucky enough to stand still and read, this is what the flyer says. A proclamation. It is on this day that I declare my candidacy for mayor. I will be your mayor, your just and true mayor. Your dreams are my dreams. I am your mayor. There is a name in red on the bottom, a name that once is uttered on the tongue, it stays there like cement that is thick and bothersome. But then the front of the mind forgets the name, leaving the name only to exist between the ears in a way that mortal humans cannot comprehend nor understand. Like a televised commercial jingle seen as a child, which can be recalled, but not in a way which recollection divines the product or its intended purpose, only that it existed and was enjoyed or loathed. These flyers, these self-same flyers are everywhere. Flagpoles, sides of buildings. They are a challenge, and yes, eventually you reach the back of them, but they are not in irate places. They do not paper over the windows of businesses, just their walls. And they do not seem to reach residential areas, only main thoroughfares of town. In a glimpse, they are on the wind, gone by noonday, but they stick in the mind. And the citizens of Surf City wonder as they encounter the flyers, as all may naturally do, who is this mayoral candidate? Ben, of course, does not dwell much on the flyers. He cannot afford that kind of brain space. The kitchen of Surf City Donuts must spring to life before most wake. It is a shadowy place, his shadowy place, but here he contend. Ben's knowledge of the kitchen is complete, shadows included. He does not need lights to start the small personal coffee maker the siblings use with their slightly pricier coffee than what feeds and soothes the masses. Here in the silence and the coolness, he feels safe. He feels the process of his life, of his daily mundane existence, and feels it as a conductor where donuts are his sweet symphony. And then, in a moment, Ben feels himself swept off his feet. He looks up to see Mace, who is his sibling, fists clenched in rage, body now tilted as Ben's back embraces the floor. His mind reels from the fact that Mace has just clocked him. And he's almost too stunned to ask. But then Mace is ducking down and punching his face again. Ben anticipates the bloody nose. The terracotta floor of the kitchen. It exists in solidness and coolness and shape and familiarity, the same as his mother's breast. Ben understands. Ben does not stop his youngest sibling from dosing out punches in anger that leave little sounds on the air, filling the space. There is no countering the blows, nor should there be. In fact, there is some solace in this, in a reckoning. Though it would have been much more convenient at the end of the day, Ben admits to himself, but then Ben thinks Mace always does run on their own timetable. A short message from Trouble. It simply reads, their favorite authors will cause them to stray. It seems like it may be a personal message or perhaps something corporate, certainly not as ominous as other messages in the past. And while it is true, thought often does cause confusion, the cosmic is still very open to ideas of worth. The cosmic believes in the arts and in the power of persuasion and a concrete argument. Your charges have no fear for most ideas, at least the good ones. They sleep together. Edgar can't remember the last time he was in a man's arm, let alone one a head taller than himself. He surely doesn't mind, though. There is so much he wants to say, an avalanche of words, but he doesn't know how to say them. Everything about Varric, the more that he knows him, are marks from the sheriff's soul and body against his own. Varric's laughter, Varric's hope, and sometimes the serious furrowing of that brow. Oh, it thrills Edgar. Thrills him in a way he only really remembers from when he was a boxer. From the pattern on his blankets and abstract lines and arrows to even the small ways that he snores, Edgar doesn't mind any of what he knows of Varric. And somewhere in his brain, he knows it's just an afterglow, that this is a product of simply being touched after so long without a kinder touch than what he wants or deserves. He tries not to think about how it's probably temporary in nature, and that once Varric finds out about the VR, about the vampire runoff that is so very illegal to dose yourself with, oh, can't imagine what Varric will want to have to do with him then, but for the moment it is nice, it's warm, it is something to dream of, and his body will betray him again when it breaks down. But in this moment, what it feels like to be with someone else in such a deep way, to not have to worry about anyone's opinions other than your own, even if your mind is poisoned against itself, it's still. Edgar's gaze, while Varric sleeps, never moves away, though perhaps for a second, for a brief glimpse at his shadow, it would have saved everyone from what was to come. But Edgar is too much in his bliss to fear the forest or the old swamplands beyond. Edgar doesn't know if he even believes they are more than just land, as he's seen what goes bump in the night, and if it lived out in the swampland, surely he would have seen it on some other occasion. A glimpse of a shadow is nothing more than a tree to him, but it is much more to the universe. And the shadow is not a tree, it is the human Louis Swan, spying, stewing, angry and out for revenge. It is almost too perfect, really. He chuckles to himself, his poisoned, acidic, privileged mind only too happy to do the damage. Ignore my advances, will you, Eddie? Well, then all your advances will too be ignored. The hiss is undeniable under his breath as it speaks, and it will take more than an hour, transforming and untransforming, to place the dream sound around the ledges of Varric's cabin. But it will be worth it. He tries very hard not to cackle, but there is a cackle on the air. It is in Louis Swan's nature to cackle. It is not really sand. It is called dream sand, but it is more of just a dust, a fine red dust made of red crystals to leave along as little trails on closed windowsills and in the creases of the outer doors to meet the inward scent of the nostrils, breathing in. This redness is not carnelian or garnet or morganite or ruby red. Oh, no. These are not natural red crystals, not natural red dust, not of the earth. This is perverted for personal use. It's the kind of thing that nature abhors And the dream sand is a dangerous thing to even touch, to handle, let alone inhale. Though the amount of times Lewis has done it before, and Edgar twice, once unbeknownst to himself, Lewis has been turned into something more than man, a thing made dark by the dreaming sand. But he only knows this truth a little, and he would have accepted it were it a more blatant truth, because personal danger is worth it. This is a step on the stairway to success, victory, vindication, a step to his true destiny, the one he was warned about. That hour passes and Edgar falls heck asleep. He can't help himself, and Barack Omer, hunky sheriff of Surf City with just a bit of silver in his hair, awakens to find his arms wrapped around Edgar. They both felt satiation in sleep. Barack is slightly surprised by a feeling of the anger of another man in that 5-second change between the land of the sleeping and the land of the awake, between place and memory, where all things are solid and yet all things falter in duplicity. He wonders, even as he awakes, if he was dreaming it all again. It is a private dream kept to himself in many ways, for self-preservation, for private joy. But it's a dream that persisted even through knowing all the things about Edgar that he knows, where he always knows more than he lets on. Eric knows that darkness and pain exists. He knows the disappointment of Edgar's life and the betrayal of the body, though not to the extent into which it exists. He is unsurprised by pain, by any of it, and he wonders if Edgar ever thinks about just how observant he is, about how Varric approaches his job as sheriff, about if Edgar has ever thought of like this before with him, or if it's the first time, if he's ever daydreamed about a life they might have together, if this is who they've been off and on without the sex since they were younger men, and this is just consummation of something that's been hanging over them for a long, long time. But he doesn't dwell on those. It's too pleasant to realize he's not merely dreaming and that the bulk of Edgar is real, and yet there is still surprise. Surprise at how solid the bulk is. He's known Edgar has always been a solid man and so human, so real. He had not counted on how much more vivid this feels, and it is so vivid. He studies Edgar's face just a little as Edgar seems to still be sleeping, and he can't help but smile. Varric is not the type to just bring anyone to bed. He can't be. And in fact, in spite of his celebrated hotness, Varric tends to be rather finicky about bedmates. Well, couchmates in this case. Some men, some women, but almost never on the first kiss, not like that. Oh, but there's been such need in that kiss. He wants to brush his fingers gently through Edgar's hair, but Edgar's bare skull negates that, and he doesn't want to wake the other man. He extricates himself slowly and softly while leaving Edgar to sleep under the warm blanket. He goes to make coffee, to pee, thinking of his day, but dwelling on the bed, thinking of opportunities. He opens the little window in his kitchen above his sink to hear the sounds of the forest in the morning. He likes them quite a bit. It is a little later that Edgar awakens to the smell of coffee grounds burning and the cold of the blankets in the bed with the window open. He is surprised to be alone, and yet he is alone. His eyes stumble around long before his body does, seeking a clock or his pants where his phone would be so we can know how late it is, just for convenience sake. It is still too early to go to work, for him at least. And he sits up, wondering if this was Varric's way of telling him to get out, feeling burning embarrassment and wondering if throwing himself at Varric means he'll never shave the man again. Varric, he calls out, small at first, feeling a bit like a chastised soul. But Varric is gone. The front door's been left wide open, and the cool air is too brisk. Those are Varric's clothes, still everywhere in the room. Beds untouched, showers untouched, just like he disappeared. Varric? He says again, and Edgar's voice is now tinged with fear as he searches the empty cabin a second time more frantically for some sign, but no, there's his wallet, his badge, his taser. There's all the signs of the things where he would have them at work, he'd have to. He sees nothing, and not even the little white bunny with the red cat paws that hops away. And he says again in a smaller voice, Eric? Surf City is an audio work of John McDonald and John McDonald Productions. It is meant for entertainment purposes only and is not meant to advise anyone lifestyle, health, or spiritual philosophical issues of their or any time. All opinions expressed are held by the characters and in some cases the creator of Surf City and Surf City John is John McDonald.